Good morning. Today's video is on Indian military leadership's integrity. And my dear friends, integrity equates with competence. If you have competence, you will have integrity. The immediate trigger, of course, is a recent talk given by a recently retired Army Chief, 4-star officer Manoj Mukund Narabne. Now, in the talk, he says that, and he was talking about a two front war, and he said that no one has won a two front war, implying that even India cannot win a two front war. What is the implication of this? Our adversaries know, of course, that we cannot win a two front war. But as far as the command is concerned, the entire Indian army is concerned, the young officers are concerned, the rank and file is concerned, they are sitting on heights of 15,000 to 30,000 feet, holding the two military lines in high altitude against Pakistan and China, because the military leadership has repeatedly told them, including Narabne when he was the army chief, whenever he was asked, he said that yes, we will win, we can fight a two front war. Now he has suddenly taken a U turn. I don't know what is the motive behind it. All I can say is that as far as the morale of the rank and file and the army is concerned, it has gone down substantially by the statement that he has made. But I will talk more about what he said. A bit about Naravne's background is in order. Now, Naravne, as I said, was the army chief for 2.5 years, starting January 2020 to April 2022, when he took over from General Bipin Rawat, who became India's first Chief of Defence Staff. Before becoming the chief, Naravne was the Eastern Army Commander. Now, please recall, after 2017 Doklam, there was a big shift insofar as threat was concerned. Because after that, and starting 2018, 2019, at a very fast pace, the PLA started building up its forces in thousands, hundreds of thousands in the Western Theatre Command. So the big shift that happened in the threat was no longer border management. I'll explain this a little later. The threat now had jumped to forces in being. That means the PLA is there in location in situ. That means that as far as the PLA is concerned, Western Theatre Command, where they have come, will be their permanent habitat, and this will be their operational base to launch attacks at short notice. Precisely what they did in May of 2020. But this was obviously ignored by Naravne as the Eastern Army Commander, because in his tenure, maximum forces build-up happened. Now, when he was the chief, he took over, as I said, in January 2020. In May of 2020, it was no surprise, because the Indian army was caught completely off guard. They never assessed the threat correctly. So while the PLA was doing an exercise, they changed the direction. And it was the period of COVID. And it is at that period they came and did multi-pronged intrusion in the Indian territory in eastern Ladakh. And today, as reported by the media, they sit on 2,000 square kilometers of Indian territory. So both these things happened on Naravne's watch. The shift in the threat and the occupation of the PLA of our territory. Now, let's come back to what he said. He made 3 points. Each of the points need a bit of a discussion. First, he said that a two-front threat does not mean that there will be a two-front war. Because he explained threat by saying that, look, threat is a challenge. We have a challenge from both Pakistan, we have a challenge from China, a whole of nation effort is required. So the diplomacy must play a role, suggesting that one of the threats, one of the fronts, obviously the China front, that needs to be pacified by use of diplomacy. Well, he's wrong. Wrong, why? Because when we say two-front threat, and it is a two-front threat, threat is a military term. What had happened was that in 1993, when India signed the Treaty of Peace and Tranquility with China, the entire border got a new name. The border came to be known as a military line, line of actual control. Now, when it becomes a military line, it is the responsibility of the military leadership to assess the threat now. It is no longer a challenge. So at that time, the threat in 1993, and subsequently we saw, because the intrusions and the transgressions of the PLA, they started increasing manifold. The threat was border management. What border management means is that the PLA spent a lot of money on infrastructure, or in the theater, Tibet theater. They put up a lot of sensors so that they could keep a watch on the Indian side's activity. And as far as the troops were concerned, they were not there at the theater. They were well behind. What they used to do is come in jeeps because the roads were there were no tracks, proper tar roads were there. They would come, do aggressive patrolling, do intrusions, do transgressions, and then go back. So at that time, after 1993, when the threat was border management, the requirement was to focus on infrastructure building. That means India at that time needed to put money in infrastructure. And I'm not saying this from hindsight. I wrote this book, The Defense Makeover, 10 Myths That Shape India's Image. This book came out in the year 2000, where I clearly have written in the first chapter, the immediate threat facing the army, Indian army, is border management, and please put money in infrastructure. It was not done. But army had some other plans. And the other plans were that in 2007, instead of even knowing what the threat is, they were oblivious of the threat. The big idea came that, oh, the Indian economy is doing very well. Perhaps we can ask for money from the government and we could build up more formations, more manpower. Because every army chief always wants to leave a legacy, and the legacy can't be that I built infrastructure. The legacy is that, oh, I raised so many formations, so many units, so many divisions. So in 2007, and Narabde knows all this. This is no secret. Everybody in the army knows it. I've written also in my book, The Last War. There's a chapter on this. Now, in December 2007, on insistence of the army, the top leadership, the government leadership, the Prime Minister, the Defense Minister, Anthony, there was a presentation made by the army, and the three services were there. Please recall on Prime Minister Modi's recent state visit to America, and in this video I will discuss the impact of the deliverables on the Indian military. There will be two things that I will talk in this video. One, India's volatility world, or what in Hindi is called Sheikh Chilli ki Dunya. And the other thing I'll talk is the real world. So let me start with a bit of an introduction.